people, often feminists, talk about the internet destroying a young woman's spirit, it's usually in very vague terms. And I firmly believe that the way that I was indoctrinated into the cult of trying to be pretty was because of movies and TV. It was because of the people that I saw on the television. I also think that this is a strange topic because I think we naturally associate beautiful people as gods and goddesses, whereas I think in movies and TV, being pretty is seen as the norm, healthy even. So let's talk about rom-coms. We have our protagonist, usually a conventionally attractive, pretty, thin, white woman. This character isn't the funny one. They don't have an especially great sense of humor. They're usually very serious and career-driven, or have the eyes of a dreamer trying to make their own in the world. But above all, they are hot. And then we have the quirky, humorous best friend.
Weird and mysterious are two very different things.
I'm weird.
No, you're quirky. Quirky and weird are two very different things.
This person is sometimes, sadly often, a person of color who is either there to only provide comedic relief for the main character or there to develop and help the story of the main character along. And from this example alone, I started to build a foundation within my psyche for what I thought a woman was supposed to be. I started to equate this ultimate sense of femininity, of quietness, and a nurturing, humble spirit as being feminine, as being exclusively for me and my personality, and if I deviated from that, I was being unladylike. And looking back, the most terrifying product of this type of thinking was how I formed my relationships earlier in my life. This might mean that I was a self-centered freak, who knows? But there was a period of time where I tried to compete with the women around me. And I did that by befriending people that I wasn't threatened by, people that I didn't think that were prettier than me. And I know that there are going to be people watching this video being like, really? You thought you were pretty enough to be the protagonist in your own rom-com? Yeah, I know. If you were the thin, pretty one, then you were the relatable one that everyone was rooting for. You were our protagonist that we wanted to see succeed. And these films and TV shows perfectly represented pretty privilege. The Princess Diaries. Everyone talks about Mia's transformation. Valid. But I also wanted a chance to talk about the Queen. Now, who doesn't love a good Julie Andrews cameo? And if I had to do the movie all over again, I don't think I would have changed a dang thing. But that was not originally how the character was portrayed. The Queen is such an oddball in the books. She's superficial and cutthroat and really, really sassy. She has tattooed eyeliner on. But then Disney makes her over into this beautified, loving, ethereal presence of Julie Andrews, which, you know, I understand it sold a lot of tickets, but at the same time, what does that say about who a woman is supposed to be, what a queen is supposed to be like? A king can be brash and offensive, but a queen is supposed to be gentle and nurturing and proper at all times. Jesus is another one for two reasons. One, because European painters wanted him to look like an angelic white guy, and the West also severely whitewashed him. And he's supposed to have dark skin and dark hair and is from the Middle East, but that's fine. You know, okay. In all of these depictions, he's also handsome. He is skinny, white. Does it sound familiar? Another example of the media influencing us like this is Disney. Disney princesses are supposed to be dream women. They're supposed to be our ideal. But what happens if you come out of the womb with this nose? This is not a Disney princess nose. It is an okay nose. It does its function. Also, shout out to Colleen from Ratatouille, who has an amazing nose that I love and I model my life after. I just find it very weird how we seem to base a lot of our relationships on leagues and people's outer shell and what they look like on the outside, even though this face does not have a bearing on my morality. It does not have a bearing on how I live my life. I think a prime example of this is Rashida Jones. Just go to any YouTube video, like interview scene that she's in, and there's always some guy, kind of a creepy guy, down in the comments being like, oh, she's so gorgeous, oh, she's so beautiful. And I'm just thinking, like, And that's an accomplishment. Because, you know, I've been told it too by guys that I've dated. Oh, you're so pretty, whatever. And they think that that's an ultimate compliment. And while, you know, I do take it as a compliment, I'm sort of questioning why I love that compliment so much. Why is being seen as beautiful an accomplishment? And we've seen with people like Alexandra from Alexandrasgirlytalk, amazing human being, love her so much, but also Mrs. Midwest, we see that their beauty almost adds an air of authority to whatever they're speaking about, which I think plays a big part in why they have such a big following. I think that their beauty supplements their natural talent, of which they have a lot of, because these are amazing, intelligent women. Someone that I find very interesting that talks about this is Leena Norms.
So the problem I always find with trying to visually represent yourself on your body is that your body isn't just a blank canvas. It's not just an aesthetic. It doesn't have aesthetic function, really, if you're asking evolution. It's a living organism in itself. It has its own ecosystem, its own worries, its own way of being. And you can't always just impress an aesthetic on that and expect it to behave.
And if you think about it like that, idolizing people because of what their body looks like is completely nonsensical. I distinctly remember watching the TV series of Tess of D'Ubervilles when I was young. That's an inappropriate thing to watch when you're young, by the way, but I watched it. And if you know anything about that story, it's basically this really pretty girl getting abused by men, systematically, throughout her life, just garbage men using and abusing her for their advantage. And through watching all of that, I still daydreamed about being as beautiful as Gemma Arterton? And I daydreamed about her romantic connection with Eddie Redmayne, even though his character was a piece of crap. And even though her looks were a hindrance to her propelling productively throughout the world, without this exploitation made by superficial men, I still daydreamed of being pretty. I still wanted to look like her. Even though we've already discussed how rewarding people for their beauty is problematic and ultimately doesn't make sense, people are doing this with aging now. There are now pictures of Anne Hathaway all over the internet at 18 and then present day, and they're like, oh my gosh, she didn't age a day. She's such an amazing human. And I'm like, no. How is preserving yourself to be attractive to a certain type of person, how is that a worthwhile accomplishment? And though this does happen to women a lot, I wanted to quickly address this does in fact happen to men. Quite a bit. And people like Henry Cavill, is that how you pronounce his name? I've never heard his name pronounced. He is constantly harassed for being a good-looking person.
Now listen, I know I'm paid to chat, but I think it's fair if I just put the cards down and we all just stare at Henry for a while.
Even though, and I will reiterate this again and again, he did not choose to look like that. Another example is Will Schuester, who's seen as the good guy, partly because he's handsome.
I'm saying to myself as we're shooting, I'm handsome and nice.
And again, if Anthony Perkins hadn't played Norman Bates in the original Psycho movie, I don't think it would have been as popular. And the same thing goes for Patrick Bateman. There are a bunch of weird comments about how they would totally date Patrick Bateman because he was played by Christian Bale, who is a very attractive man. It makes absolutely no sense. This has been a huge point of contention in my life, something that I really stressed about, and actually the reason that I cut my hair. I originally didn't want to cut my hair because I thought that I wouldn't look as attractive, and I think I was right. I don't think I look as attractive, but I want to experience the idea of not living to look ultimately my most attractive at all times, because really it doesn't have any bearing on who I am as a person. It's the vessel that I inhabit as a human being in this world. Yes.
Thank you.